Consumer demand for anti-aging, this, that, and the other has never been stronger. You can blame 2020 time when we were all staying at home getting Zoom dysmorphia. And so if you open a social media app, there is a good chance you're going to get hit in the face with an ad for a beauty device, whether it be a high-frequency wand, a radio frequency gadget, some gyrating EMS thing, an LED face mask. But are these things actually going to benefit your skin? Do they actually work? Are they actually worth not just the money, but importantly, your time, which is a limited resource? Well, I'm a board-certified dermatologist, and in today's video, I'm going to break it down. We're going to talk about all of these different popular beauty devices. Is there any research to show that they actually do anything? Not just cells in a dish, theoretical hand-waving, but on actual human volunteers. Which ones work? Which ones don't? Importantly, what are some potential adverse effects, side effects, risks that one might encounter when doing these things at home? First of all, let's talk about what can work. Radio frequency delivers high-frequency electrical current to the skin deeper into the dermis to generate heat that can have impacts on collagen integrity. Ultimately, what that does is it stimulates the fibroblasts to make more collagen and elastin. The end result is tightening, wrinkle smoothing, and even body contouring and sculpting. Now, this is a procedure done in many cosmetic dermatology practices, radio frequency, and it's often paired with microneedling, another gadget we'll get into later in this video. But radio frequency by itself definitely is an evidence-based intervention for improving wrinkles, laxity, and firming and tightening the skin and body contouring. There are devices that you can buy and actually execute these treatments at home. But can the at-home gadgets do what the in-office things can do? They likely can do some of what the in-office treatments can do, but not quite to the same extent, which ultimately is a good thing, okay? Not everything should be in the hands of the consumer because, again, they do have the potential for adverse events. So typically these devices use bipolar or multipolar radio frequency, which is a lot of jargon speak, to be honest, but the reason they're built this way is that this prevents overheating and eliminates the need for active cooling of the skin, ultimately making it something that is technically safe to use at home because it's not going to overheat the skin to the point of causing burns. That being said, the multipolar devices are going to be a lot weaker and are more shallow in their penetration into the skin compared to what you would be getting in office. But some of these at-home devices have actually been studied in clinical studies on human volunteers showing benefits. Which ones? The brand Tripolar has a couple of clinical trials on their devices, as does the brand Nua and Dermawand. Now, I'm not affiliated with these companies, but they are the ones being used in these clinical studies. The clinical studies have looked at the face, the abdomen, the leg, the arms, and the neck. These studies show that at-home use of these devices can improve collagen and increase dermal thickness, which is an anti-aging goal. With age, all that starts to decline. You get wrinkles, you get loss of elasticity, you get loss of volume, you get sagging, drooping, all of those things. So there is clinical evidence that these at-home devices can improve the thickness of the deeper layers of the skin and improve collagen production. When used on the leg, there's clinical evidence that at-home devices can improve body contouring and ultimately result in a reduction in the circumference of the thigh. And there are studies showing a decrease in the volume of wrinkles around the mouth and around the eyes, and an improvement in the jawline, an area where we tend to get some sagging, some drooping, and some descent, leading to loss of that jaw definition. So in other words, they may offer that snatched jawline that a lot of people are seeking these days. And there are even some studies showing improvement in pigmentation, and importantly, no increase in redness or discoloration. There's also clinical evidence using at-home devices for a reduction in the distance from the brow to the hairline, which is awesome because we do get some descent of the brows as part of the normal aging process, which makes the face look older. If that all sounds fantastic, before you click add to cart, what can go wrong with doing this at home? Well, the clinical studies that we have on the at-home devices, whether it be Nua, Tripolar, or Dermawand, there is one trial that showed some people experienced transient redness that resolved. There was no evidence of any major side effects, adverse events. But it's important to keep in mind that, these clinical studies, they're only done for a limited time. They're not necessarily the most robust clinical studies as far as the number of people they're looking at and the way the study is done. So in other words, just because we don't have clinical studies showing showing adverse events doesn't mean that somebody out there might not develop an adverse event. A lot of people have reservations with the at-home radiofrequency devices and the in-office devices as well, because some of these devices actually can reduce unwanted fat, melt the fatty tissue. So some people are concerned that these might trigger facial volume loss of fat in the face, which we lose fat with facial aging, and it's part of what contributes to the appearance of the aged face. That's not something that people want from a beauty device. Now, that's never been shown clinically. No one has ever shown up in a dermatologist's office, at least it has been reported. But if you go online, you will find forums of people who say, yeah, they did develop that. Now, it's hard to say. Do they develop that from the device itself, or is it sort of guilty by association? Because people do lose facial fat normally as part of the normal aging process. So it's hard to say, especially when you're just coming across these reports on various anonymous online forums. So in other words, yes, there's clinical data to support at-home radiofrequency. The clinical data suggests that it is safe, but whether or not you feel comfortable doing it yourself with the potential unknowns makes perfect sense. It's not mandatory for health to pursue this. Number 2 is the LED light therapy masks. Those are everywhere. They're really popular. Through a process known as photobiomodulation, select wavelengths of light can stimulate healing and renewal pathways in the skin. They can improve cellular metabolism. They can target, depending on the wavelength of light, the fibroblasts to produce more healthy collagen. Ultimately, that's what we would be seeking in an anti-aging device. So let's get into the nitty-gritty though. It's not just any color of light. Red and near infrared specifically are what you'll encounter in most anti-aging LED face masks. The red and near infrared light, they can stimulate in the dermis the fibroblasts to make more healthy collagen, reducing wrinkle depth, and they also can help to reduce inflammation, and they can help to improve cellular renewal. Importantly, they have been tested in clinical studies, specifically the brand Omnilux, for example, which is what I use. I am affiliated with Omnilux, and I do a lot of sponsorships with them, but that's what I use, and that is what has been used in clinical studies. And as a side note, they do make the devices that are used in office. There are clinical studies showing improvement in wrinkles, an improvement in hydration, an improvement in elasticity, a reduction in skin inflammation, an improvement in skin tone, improvements in skin texture. But you also have LED masks that use blue light, and oftentimes these are combined with red light. So the blue light is specific for acne. It targets the acne-causing bacterium, Cutibacterium acnes, and for mild acne breakouts, it can be really helpful. Combine that with the red to calm down inflammation, and yes, these masks can certainly help calm down and reduce breakouts. But they're not intended to replace standard acne treatments, but rather can provide a supporting role for better acne clearance. And that has been demonstrated in clinical studies. Omnilux makes a red and blue light mask, the Omnilux Clear, specifically for people with acne, and that is one that I recommend. And as a side note, red and near infrared, not only are they good for the visible signs of facial aging and in terms of improving collagen, reducing inflammation, improving moisture content, all of those desirable cosmetic benefits, but red and near infrared applied to the scalp also can improve hair growth. It reduces scalp inflammation, stimulates metabolism of the hair follicle cells to get them into the growing phase, and it also helps to improve circulation in the scalp, delivering growth factors, nutrients. Building a hair requires a lot of nutrients, and so having that enhanced blood flow is thought to play a role in improvement in hair thickness, density, and regrowth using red and near infrared LED therapy to the scalp. But today we're focused on facial care, and yeah, red and near infrared effective for anti-aging purposes, red and blue great for acne. What are some potential side effects one might encounter though with doing a mask at home that you should be aware of? Well, reported side effects are mild transient redness that fades relatively shortly and doesn't happen in all people, and that is short-lived. Otherwise, there are no reported adverse events. In contrast to radiofrequency, there is no heat being generated, and there's no ultraviolet radiation being emitted from these, so it's not potentially cancer-causing or anything harmful like that. Aside from the transient redness, another thing I will point out with regards to the blue light specifically, we know that blue light from the sun can trigger more stubborn hyperpigmentation in medium to deep skin tone. So I would exercise caution with pursuing blue light at home if you have a tendency towards hyperpigmentation. It's not been shown that at-home LED therapy masks or treatments with blue light cause this, but something that you might want to be a little bit more cautious with if you have a tendency towards hyperpigmentation. In order for these masks to work though, this is key. You have to use them consistently. They're not a one and done kind of thing. You need to use them consistently, and it takes time to see results, but with consistent use, they definitely can improve the appearance of the skin, improve wrinkle depth, hydration, and also if you're using a mask with blue light, can help improve acne breakouts. Now, there are a lot of LED devices out there that kind of sprinkle in some other colors of light, yellow, green, and the research backing those is not quite as robust, and so I say skip those other colors, just stick to red and near infrared for your anti-aging goals, and red and blue light for your acne goals. All right, number 3 is microcurrent. Microcurrent devices utilize a low to medium frequency electrical current to penetrate through to the skin. It generates an electrical field, which affects the skin, the subcutaneous tissue, and the muscles beneath. The claim here is that the electrical current works alongside endogenous currents, cellular currents, to stimulate healing and renewal pathways, and ultimately works to allegedly target the muscles to improve facial volume and to have a lifting and a tightening effect. However, the clinical research backing up microcurrent devices is limited to one study. This study did show that with consistent use, an at-home microcurrent device did end up leading to subjective improvements in the appearance of the face after 12 weeks, and also they looked with ultrasound at facial muscles and showed an increase in thickness of one facial muscle group. In this study, there were no serious adverse events other than some transient redness. You will also encounter EMS. EMS stands for electrical muscle stimulation. And in contrast to microcurrent, this targets the muscles and leads to visible involuntary muscle contraction. There's no clinical data to back these devices up for any sort of anti-aging benefit. Aside from the one study on microcurrent, which is limited, there's not a ton of research backing up the claims with regards to either microcurrent or EMS. My personal experience in having used both types of devices, specifically the NuFace, which is a microcurrent device, is that they provide a temporary lifting effect, but the results don't last very long, and you may enjoy that temporary lifting effect, but what are the potential adverse events? Aside from the temporary redness, it's not clear. However, if you spend time online where you're seeing a lot of the advertisements for these on, say, TikTok, there are people, customers, who come forward having developed adverse events, often from the EMS devices. For example, there was a gal who developed Bell's palsy after using an EMS device. While it's not clear if the device caused that, it does make theoretical sense that the robust involuntary muscle contraction could cause some localized inflammation that could lead to reactivation of herpes virus, which is associated with Bell's palsy. It's also unclear to what extent involuntary forcible muscle contraction actually is going to have a meaningful effect on the appearance of facial aging, aside from maybe some temporary swelling, which gives you a subtle improvement in volume that is short-lived. Because if anything, strengthening the facial muscles is not really thought to lend itself to an anti-aging effect. The stronger the muscle contractions, the more forcible creasing you're going to have on the skin, which could lead to more expression wrinkles. Yes, it's true that with age, we have a decline in muscle mass, and to a certain extent, that's also going to impact our facial muscles, but involuntarily working them out is not really a logical or evidence-based way to rejuvenate the appearance of the face. So these devices, at best, temporarily lift, sculpt, and rejuvenate the face, but at worst could potentially cause some inflammation in the skin due to the forcible involuntary muscle contraction that they are affecting. And then the final thing that can work is microneedling. Microneedling involves application of little needles essentially to the skin. It's delivered in office through a variety of tools, and this creates little tiny channels of micro-injury that stimulate healing pathways that ultimately lead to an improvement in collagen. And it has a ton of clinical applications as far as rejuvenation, improving the appearance of wrinkles, allowing for better penetration of topical medications, treating acne scars. I mean, there are so many amazing therapeutic benefits of in-office microneedling. Now, as far as the at-home devices, they typically should have very short needles, so they don't penetrate to the level needed to stimulate dermal remodeling like what you would achieve in office. Longer needles are more risky and should only be left up to a professional to do. But the shorter needles, do they actually benefit the skin? Don't have good clinical studies to back that up. They may help with exfoliating, but again, like I said, they're not going to lead to meaningful remodeling in the deeper layers of the skin to truly improve the appearance of wrinkles. Now, while most safe devices are going to have microneedles that are no longer than 0.5 millimeter, you will encounter various devices that you can access that have longer needles, and there are a ton of DIYs on the internet, and people are really into doing this themselves. As I've cautioned in other videos, there are certainly risks to doing this at home, and I'm not the only dermatologist that advises against doing this at home. You'll find plenty online, and no, it's not because we want to hoard all of these cases, but there are some serious potential adverse events that you can encounter with doing microneedling at home, such as bleeding, infection, scarring, and you also can have adverse events from subsequent topicals that you put on the skin. There have been cases of people who develop granulomatous reactions to products after applying them following microneedling, and you also can even develop a full-blown systemic hypersensitivity. So there are reports of serious adverse events that substantiate my concerns with it at baseline. And a lot of people will say, well, those are just from people who did not do their research into the proper technique. But you can have what you think based on your research on the internet is proper technique as far as sterilizing the instruments, but at-home sterilization approaches, they don't necessarily prevent all types of pathogens. Some pathogens are particularly hardy, and so this is of concern. There have been cases of people introducing viral infections into their skin with microneedling, so it's not something that I recommend doing. So while microneedling has a lot of clinical research to back up its efficacy, you do start to get into a risks outweigh benefits territory with at home, because the benefits with the little short needles are really underwhelming. The benefits with the deeper needles in the hands of somebody who is just inexperienced, doesn't have the full clinical training, more risks versus benefit. Not something I recommend. Things that without a doubt don't really do anything or are not evidence-based to do anything, the pore vacuums. These definitely can cause more harm than good because they can be excessively harsh in the suction, and that can lead to broken capillaries, bruising, and they don't actually suck out anything from your pores, and it's not only potentially harmful and causing serious adverse problems, but it also is ineffective. Instead, use salicylic acid. It actually localizes down in your pore to properly exfoliate it effectively and safely. Also, the high frequency ones, I did a video a while back on those. No data to support those. There are a lot of claims around them as far as clearing breakouts, but you're much better off if you're dealing with acne breakouts, sticking to evidence-based treatments. As far as spot treatments, benzoyl peroxide is an evidence-based acne spot treatment to get rid of a pimple. And then in office, steroid injections will help clear up an active, painful cystic pimple much faster and is evidence-based as opposed to high-frequency ones. Now, gua sha and jade rolling are going nowhere. Those are really popular. I have some videos on these techniques and tools. These are inexpensive and unlikely to cause any harm. I don't necessarily have a problem with people doing them. They likely work by providing some temporary reduction in facial swelling, but they do not stimulate collagen production, reverse wrinkles, tighten, or lift the skin. These are claims I see a lot of influencers make. It's just not plausible. They make all sorts of far-reaching claims about the gua sha, the jade rolling, and these are the influencers who almost always show you a picture of their face when they were like in college after a night of heavy drinking. They're a little puffy or whatever, and then they show you in good lighting their face claiming that the jade roller has completely rejuvenated things. But if you know what you're looking at in these before and afters, all you see is a younger person versus somebody 10 years older who is now more sophisticated looking, but not necessarily reversing volume loss or anything like that. All right, so let's talk about some misconceptions and some frequently asked questions. Number one, the devices that can work and can offer a benefit, they only work if you stay consistent with them. So for example, the LED face masks, the radio frequency devices, they're not necessarily a one and done kind of thing. You have to stay consistent. Number two is these aren't a replacement for in-office treatments. You will not get the same degree of results with these devices as you would with an in-office treatment. So set your expectation going in. The devices that we covered today that have been shown to work, they can provide some excellent results in-home by themselves, just not at the same level as the in-office treatments. They also can be a great option to to get you in between in-office treatments to get better results from your in-office treatments. So they can supplement the cosmetic procedures that you are getting in office, and they can supplement your skincare. All right, you guys, so that's a summary of the devices that can work, their potential downsides, negative effects, and the devices that don't do anything and can potentially harm your skin without offering any benefit. Hope you guys found this video enjoyable, useful. Now, recently I did a video on skincare ingredients that you can put on your skin that actually are scientifically backed, evidence-based, so you know what actually can work versus can't work. So check that video out next if you missed it. If you guys like this one, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.